From the Fidelity Bank Foundation studio, PBS Kansas presents One-on-One with Victor Hogstrom.
Some stories define a moment, others shape a generation. This is where we meet the people who write the story of Kansas, one chapter, one conversation at a time. Our guest tonight, Lou Heldman, has been a guiding voice in Wichita's civic and academic life for nearly 2 decades. His journey to Kansas was paved with a Pulitzer Prize-winning career in journalism that took him to 6 cities, from the newsrooms of the Miami Herald to the publisher's office of the Wichita Eagle. Heldman embarked on a second career at Wichita State University, where, as vice president, he was deeply involved in launching the Innovation Campus. Now in retirement, he remains a driving force in our community's art scene, serving as the recent chairman of the Wichita Art Museum's Board of Trustees. A reporter, editor, executive, and educator who has helped shape the stories of our city. Get ready for a fascinating half-hour interview as I go one-on-one with Lou Heldman right now. Hello and welcome to One-on-One. I'm Victor Hogstrom, and I'm joined tonight by a man whose curiosity and leadership have left a lasting mark on journalism, higher education, and the cultural fabric of Wichita. So please welcome Lou Heldman to the program.
Hello, Victor.
How are you?
I'm excellent, thank you.
Where have you been hiding?
I have been on the golf course and preparing to be a grandfather.
Oh, really? Congratulations.
Thank you. I had nothing to do with it.
Okay. But let's begin by having you take us back to your upbringing when you were in Cincinnati, and what values did your parents and grandfather instill in you? Because your grandfather had a role in your life too.
He did, and my parents were both great readers. We had 2 newspapers coming to the house, and they watched the TV news probably twice a night in the 1950s. And my grandfather was a great believer in the importance of community, and he was active in civic affairs in Cincinnati. And he was, at the time, I think, sort of unusual. He was on what was known as the Mayor's Friendly Relations Council, which had a lot of outreach, especially to black, then known as African Americans, and by other names as well. But in Cincinnati, he always believed, his expression was hands across the water. And that's what I grew up with. So those became my values as well.
Now, I'm curious, your parents watched television news twice a night, but you ended up being a print journalist. How did that happen?
Well, they also got 2 newspapers.
Oh, okay.
And when I tried to read the newspaper before I went to school every day, and then there would be another one there when I got home from school.
Okay.
So I was surrounded by that and by books, and all of that became very important to me.
But a junior high English assignment led to your first published story.
That's true.
And how did that all come about?
Well, an 8th grade English teacher invited several of us to essentially try out for the newspaper that was put out by the 9th grade journalism class. And the newspaper, I've always worked with newspapers with funny names, And this newspaper, this first newspaper, was called the Jaguar Jargon.
Okay.
And when I got that first story published in the Jaguar Jargon, it was a magical feeling. And almost from the beginning, what I loved about being a reporter was that you could follow your curiosity, and I had a lot of curiosity. So I talked to people in the school who I probably never would have talked to otherwise, not just students, but also teachers, administrators, the maintenance man for the school showed me the boiler room. As far as I know, I was the only student ever in the boiler room at Schroeder Junior High School. And journalism gives you a wonderful license to go anywhere and meet anyone. And I was a pretty shy kid. And for me, it was like a mask and a costume I could put on.
Mm-hmm.
And then when there was this feedback loop that when a story was published, people would read the story and tell me they'd read the story. And that was validation. And the more I did it, the more I wanted to do it.
And that shaped your career right there.
It absolutely did. I'd like to say that I've grown up a lot since I was 13, but not in many ways.
Right, right. And you're still curious, I hope.
I'm still curious, and I still bring a lot of energy to learning about people and about things in the community.
Lou, what are you most curious about today?
Well, the future of Wichita really interests me.
Okay.
Because my daughter and son-in-law are here, and my son isn't far away, and I want to know that Wichita is going to be a good place for a very long time.
Your early career had major highlights too, from a Pulitzer Prize for crisis coverage to helping launch a Spanish language newspaper. What key lessons from that period did you learn and did you bring with you to Wichita?
Well, I think work ethic and the understanding that everything you do well involves marshaling a group of people to do it. So I loved being a reporter, but no one would have said I was the best reporter on any newspaper I worked on. I was okay, but the reporters who become the big names in journalism tend to have an instinct for the jugular. Or maybe it doesn't start out that way, but they may feel like they're crusaders, and I never really took on the crusader mantle. I was more interested in explaining complicated things. And the Spanish language newspaper project was a great project because I was working with a group of people in a language other than my own. And I sat through about 20 hours of focus groups conducted in Spanish, and with rotating translators, because translating is exhausting. And I would listen to someone speak in Spanish with great passion for a minute, and the translator would say, "She doesn't like it." And I said, I could see from her facial expressions and her body language that she doesn't like it. What else did she say? No, really, that's all she said. She doesn't like it. I learned a lot that way.
Right.
You know, dealing with different audiences.
But let's talk briefly about Terry, your wife.
Sure.
You met her on your first day as a reporter. in the state capitol.
Yes.
Tell us that story.
Well, the Detroit Free Press Capitol bureau chief was showing me around the Capitol on my first day, and at that point, reporters could walk onto the floor of the House and the Senate when they were in session. So we entered through the center doors of this very large and impressive room, and he's sort of whispering to me about what's going on. And I noticed maybe 50, 75 feet away, by the window, sitting at a desk with a legislator, is this obviously very smart young woman. Just from the back of her head, I could tell she was really smart. And I won't say I was instantly smitten, but fortunately, I came in contact with her boss in the course of meeting legislators, and eventually, I would see her at events and talk to her, and that was more than 50 years ago, and it worked out pretty well.
Beautiful. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Lou, you went around, you lived around the United States working in different newspaper organizations. Give us a quick briefing as to your career, and how did you end up in Wichita?
Well, the long road began first with summer internships that were really valuable to me. The first was at a Jewish weekly called the American Israelite. The next summer was at the Cincinnati Call and Post, which was a black weekly, and I would put my record up against many people, saying very few have worked for both a black and a Jewish weekly in successive summers. And working for the black weekly set me up well, because when the recruiters came to Ohio State from the Detroit Free Press, I had worked in an urban environment. It was in Cincinnati, but I had seen a lot that my classmates hadn't seen in that process. I used to go on stories, and I came back and said to my editor one day, "Boy, I'm getting a lot of strange looks, Ben." Ben Fair was his name. And he said, "They think if you're there for this newspaper, you must be black. They just can't figure out how."
Okay.
And anyway, so it got me to Detroit, and here's the odd Wichita connection. The editor who hired me was Neil Shine. Neil Shine is the father of Tom Shine, who was already at the Wichita Eagle when I arrived, and then went on to a great career both at the Eagle and at KMUW. And I had nothing to do with Tom's career, really, but his dad had everything to do with mine. So when I joined the Detroit Free Press, that was one of the largest newspapers in the United States at the time, and it was owned by Knight Ridder, that ended up with newspapers in more than 30 cities. And even though I was in 6 different cities, each of the newspapers I worked for was owned by Knight Ridder.
Okay.
And so I was moving around the country with people I knew well and trusted, and they knew me well, and I hope they trusted me to give me jobs of increasing responsibility.
So when you moved to Wichita to work with the Eagle in 2002, what was your first impression of the city and the state of Kansas and the newspaper at the time?
Well, I will tell you that my first job as a publisher, and we should say what a publisher is, because when I say publisher, most people hear editor, because editor is a term they know and publisher isn't.
Right.
So the publisher, in the times that there were many, many more locally owned newspapers, the publisher was either the owner of the newspaper or the steward of the newspaper for the owner, who was usually someone who lived in the same town. And that was certainly true of the Eagle up until around 1970, when it was purchased by the company, that Knight Ridder, that ended up sending me here. So as publisher, you're the CEO of the company.
Right.
And that means you have a lot of business responsibilities, including advertising, sales, and circulation, and production and distribution. And you're also responsible for the news and editorial policy. Right. And so when I came to Wichita, I was viewing it not from a news standpoint, but more from a business standpoint. And this was, remember, right after 9/11, and Wichita was down at the heels, and things were only going to get worse. So we were facing a very perilous business situation, and that went on for 3 or 4 years. So I became, among other things, a big supporter of anything that involved economic development for Wichita. So I tended to see Wichita through a lens of jobs and the revenue of the newspaper, and whether the political levers were in place that would allow the city to thrive.
What would you say was the biggest story that was covered taking place in Wichita during those days?
Well, the biggest story at that time was definitely the economy and what was happening with the aircraft industry. Probably the biggest story in my time at the Eagle was the BTK story, when an Eagle reporter, Hearst Laviana, received an anonymous letter with what turned out to be the driver's license of someone BTK had killed. And Hearst turned that over to the police with the full knowledge of his editors, and the story proceeded from there right up to the capture and imprisonment of BTK, and that was quite something.
So Lou, what were some of the greatest challenges that you faced as publisher of the Wichita Eagle?
Well, I think part of it was whether people thought the Eagle was fair. Long before I arrived, Wichita had an event that attracted a lot of national attention, the Summer of Mercy, with abortion protests. And at that point, there was a real rift that developed between the parts of the community who felt the Eagle's consistent pro-life stance was an abomination. And one of the things I felt like I had to do was let the people in that part of the community feel that the Eagle meant to be fair and that there was someone who would always listen. And as I started out just by getting a list of pastors who were influential in that movement, and I asked to meet with each of them individually, and I went to their churches, and it was a great education for me, because I had never had someone at the beginning or end of a meeting say, let's pray together, or more often, I want to pray for you. And at first, I didn't know quite how to take it, because no one said, I want to pray for you because you're going to hell because of your newspaper. But it turned out that those were important relationships to have. And there was a time that people were picketing in front of the Eagle and because of our coverage or editorial. And I invited them inside because I always think that things go better when people know each other as human beings and find that usually they have more in common than what divides them.
And when they participate in the effort.
Sure, and it doesn't mean what divides them isn't important.
Right.
And it will continue to divide them, but you know that they're human beings on both ends of the transaction.
Right. Wow. So how then do you perceive journalism in Wichita today?
It's in a rebuilding phase, let's call it that, because of course journalism has changed everywhere, and the move to digital has to be made, and people are making it to varying degrees based on their resources and their knowledge. I see some real positive things on that front in Wichita. First of all, the Wichita Foundation, Shelley Pritchard and Courtney Bankston, and their board have done a great job of saying information is important to the community. It's a need like health care.
Right.
And we ought to serve the information needs. So there are digital organizations growing like shoutwichita.com, which covers the arts. They're doing a fantastic job, and I think most people don't know about it yet, but if they look at shoutwichita.com, they'll be surprised at how much art activity is in Wichita.
So Lou, you talked about the state of affairs in journalism in Wichita. Why don't you give us the bigger picture, the national perspective? What's your perception?
Well, and this is what I taught about at Wichita State, the coming together of the internet with traditional media and business and society. And we have all been digitally empowered to spread the news. And we're all digitally empowered to create our own version of the news. And now it's a matter, we've seen the bad impact of that. Now it's a matter of harnessing the good parts of it. But the great thing is that it used to be that I could read the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times or Washington Post once a day. Now I can read them all day long. And I think
because of digital.
Because of digital,
Right.
and because they have the resources to do it well. And I like the diffusion of media power that is enabled by digital, and I think people have to become their own curators of what they will pay attention to. And I have to tell you that I could watch, dog and baby and golf videos hour after hour, and I have to force myself to eat my spinach and read serious news and editorials.
Right.
But it's a wonderful media landscape right now, just because of there's so much of it, and people have to make good choices.
Right. And choices are many out there to be made. Let's talk about how did you end up at Wichita State after a conversation with then President Don Beggs about a job at KU.
Well, I I knew that the newspaper business that I had grown up in and loved was going away. That was clear by the early 2000s, and that I wasn't equipped well for the next phase. I wish I had learned to code when Mark Zuckerberg did. But I knew I wasn't ready to fully retire, and I saw that there was a job coming open in journalism at KU that even without a PhD, I was qualified for. Mm-hmm. And I had gotten to know and love Don and his wife Shirley, and considered them friends. And I said to Don, I'm probably going to retire in the next year or so. I know there's a job coming open at KU. Would you be willing to recommend me? And he said, we don't want you going with those people. When you're ready to retire, we'll find something at Wichita State. And I thought that was great, but I didn't really see a role for myself at Wichita State. And when I retired, Don was maybe one of the first people to call when the news went out that I was leaving, and he repeated that he didn't want me going with those people. And I talked with Don and with the chief academic officer, and they crafted a role for me, and I couldn't believe the title. It was Distinguished Senior Fellow in Media Management and Journalism. And I went home and very proudly told Terry what the title was, and she said, well, I understand the senior part. And then I asked my new boss, Gary Miller, the provost, what that title meant, and he said, it means you've done something, but not academically. And that actually was in line with my very poor grade point average when I was a student at Ohio State, because I had spent all my time working on the student newspaper and very little of it in class or studying.
Right. We have a game that we play on this program, and we have one for you. But I know that we're running out of time, so we'll do a two-parter with this interview.
Okay.
Thank you for joining us for part one of this program, and we look forward to having you next week for part two.
Thank you, Victor.
And thank you for watching. If you have a question or comment, you know the drill. Email us at oneonone@kpts.org. Until next time, I'm Victor Hogstrom. Stay curious and stay engaged, and we'll see you again soon.